Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we're going to build a complete employee management CRUD application using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. CRUD basically stands for create, read, update, and delete. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of my upcoming coding tutorials. Alright, before we jump into coding, let me quickly show you how our employee management app actually works. Here, I'll start by adding some employee details in the form, their full name, employee code, country, and salary. Now, when I hit submit, you can see the data immediately appears inside the table on the right. Next, if I click on the edit button, you'll notice that the same data is reflected back into the form fields. That means we can easily make changes. For example, let me update some details and hit submit again. And as you can see, the updated values are now saved in the table. We also have the option to delete any record. So, when I click delete, it first shows me a confirmation alert. Are you sure you want to delete this record? Once I confirm, that particular employee is completely removed from the table. And finally, our form also has a validation check. If I try to submit the form without filling in all the fields, like here I just entered the name and left everything else empty, it immediately shows an alert asking me to fill in all fields. So this is how the application will work once we build it step by step. Now let's start building this project from scratch. First, I'll create a new folder on my desktop and name it Employee Management CRUD App. This folder will contain all of our project files. Next, I'll open this folder in Visual Studio Code, which is the code editor I'll be using for this tutorial. Inside the folder, I'm going to create 3 files: index.html for our structure and content, style.css for designing and styling the app, and script.js for all the JavaScript functionality. With the setup ready, let's begin writing our HTML. First, I'll generate the boilerplate code by typing Shift+1 and pressing Enter. This gives us the doctype HTML declaration and the basic HTML structure. Inside the head section, I'll give the project a title Employee Management CRUD App. After that, I'll link our external CSS file by using style.css. This will connect our styling file to this HTML page. Now inside the body, I'll create a main container using a diff with the class container. This will hold 2 main sections, the form on the left and the table on the right. So first, inside the container, I'll add another diff with the class call1. This is where our form goes. The form has the attribute autocomplete off, so the browser doesn't autofill the inputs. Inside the form, we have 4 input fields, each wrapped in its own diff. The first one has a label full name and an input with the ID full name. The second one is for employee code with the ID EMP code. The third one is for country with the ID country. And the fourth one is for salary with the ID salary. Below the fields, we have a submit button inside a diff with the class action button. This button will allow us to submit the form data. Now moving to the second column, I'll add another diff with the class call2. Inside this, we'll create a table to display all employee records. The table has a themed section with column headings: full name, EMP code, country, salary, and an extra column for edit/delete actions. The body is left empty for now, because we'll use JavaScript to dynamically insert rows later. Finally, at the end of the body, I'll link our JavaScript file using script.js. This makes sure all the JavaScript runs after the HTML is loaded. That's our HTML structure completed. Now let's open it using Live Server to preview what we have so far. At this point, you can see the form on the left with all 4 input fields, along with the submit button. And on the right, we have the empty table with the headings already in place. Of course, it doesn't look very nice yet, because we haven't added any styling. Alright, time to style our app. I've opened style.css, and we'll go through it step by step so you understand exactly what each line does. First, I'm using the universal selector which targets every element on the page. Margin 0 and padding 0 reset the default spacing that browsers add to elements. Box sizing border box is super important. It tells the browser to include padding and borders inside the set width of an element. Font family Sego UI sets a friendly, modern font stack. Next, let's style the body. Display flex turns the body into a flex container so we can easily center content. Justify content center centers things horizontally. Align items center centers things vertically. Height 100 VH makes the body as tall as the full viewport height, so vertical centering always works. Background. Linear gradient creates a smooth left-to-right gradient. A deep brown, blending into a warm tan, and finishing with a soft peach. It gives the app a polished, professional feel. Now, let's lay out our two main columns, the form and the table, inside a container. Display Flex puts the two columns side by side. Justify content space between pushes them to the left and right with space in the middle. Align Items Center aligns both columns vertically along their center lines. Width 90% keeps the layout narrower than the screen, giving us nice margins on the sides. Gap 2 Rem adds a consistent gap between the columns. Using Rem keeps spacing relative to the base font size. Let's style the left column that holds the form. Background color a very light gray card background so the form sits on a soft panel. Width 50% makes the form take up half the container. Padding 3 Rem 2 Rem adds breathing room. More padding top-bottom and slightly less left-right. Border radius 2 Rem gives the card rounded corners for a friendly, modern look. Now, the labels above each input. Font size 1 Rem is typically 16px, clean and readable. Font weight 700 makes labels bold, so they stand out from the inputs. A warm brown tone that matches the theme. Time to make the inputs look clean and consistent. Background color sets inputs to pure white, so text is extremely readable. Outline none removes the default focus ring. We rely on the border to show focus. Border a subtle 2px border using our theme color with transparency. Soft but visible. Color sets the input text color to the same deep brown as our theme. Width 100% makes inputs stretch full width of the form column. Padding 10px gives the text room so inputs don't look cramped. Border radius 5px adds a small rounded corner for a gentle look. Box sizing border box ensures padding and border are included within the width, so 100% really fits. Margin 0.5 Rem 0 adds vertical spacing between inputs for clear separation. Next, we customize just the submit button using an attribute selector. Background color gives the button our brand color, so it's clearly the primary action. Width 50% makes the button half the column width, which looks balanced under the inputs. Display block makes width settings actually apply and puts it on its own line. Border none removes the default border, so the color fills edge to edge. Border radius 5px, a subtle curve that matches the inputs. Font weight bold and font size 18px make the button confident and readable. Color white sets the button text to white for strong contrast. Padding 12px gives the button a comfortable height for clicking. Text align center centers the label text. Cursor pointer shows the hand cursor on hover so users know it's clickable. We also add a gentle hover effect. On hover, we switch to the same color with slightly dark, which makes it appear slightly softer against the light card background. It's a subtle visual feedback that feels polished. Now the right column that holds the table. This simply mirrors the left side, so our layout is a 50-50 split. Let's style the table headers. Background color gives header cells a solid brand bar at the top of the table. Color sets the text to a soft peach that has good contrast on the dark header. Border none ensures no extra lines clutter the header row. Padding 15px gives each header cell comfortable clickable height and breathing space. Now, make the table behave and size nicely. Border collapse merges borders so the table looks clean and unified rather than double-bordered. Width 100% lets the table stretch across the full width of its column, aligning perfectly with the headers. Now the table data cells. Border bottom 1px solid black adds a thin line under each row so entries are clearly separated. Color keeps the text color consistent with our theme. Font size 1.2 Rem, slightly larger than normal text for easy scanning across rows. Text align center Centers content in each cell, so the table looks tidy and balanced. Font weight, 600. Makes entries semi-bold, improving readability without shouting. Now style buttons for edit and delete. We will add them using JavaScript with class btn. Color dark aligns action colors with our theme. Font size, 16px. Keeps the action text readable but not oversized. Line height, 2 rem. Gives each action a taller click area. More tappable and comfortable. Cursor, pointer. Shows it's interactive. Margin right, 6px. Adds a little space between edit and delete so they don't touch. And finally, a hover effect to make actions feel responsive. Text decoration. Underline. Gives a clear hover signal. Color, red. Makes the action pop on hover. Especially useful for delete. Now, if your live server is running, hit save and you should instantly see a light gray form card on the left, a table area on the right, and a polished, warm theme tying everything together. That completes the CSS. Next up, we'll move into JavaScript and wire up the full CRUD functionality. Alright, let's start wiring up our JavaScript. The very first thing I'm doing is grabbing references to the elements we need from the page, so we don't have to search the page again and again later. Think of document as a live object that represents our entire web page. Get element by ID full name asks the page. Give me the element whose ID is exactly full name. We store that element in a variable called full name. Same idea here. We fetch the employee code input by its ID EMP code and keep a reference in EMP code. Again, we'll read or write the text with EMP code.value later. This grabs the country input element. Storing these inputs up front is a good habit. This is sometimes called DOM caching. Keeps our code clean and avoids repeatedly searching the page. And this is the salary input element. So now we have 4 input elements cached. Full name, EMP code, country, and salary. Now we move to the table where we'll show the employees. First, we find the table by its ID employee list. Then, on that table, we call .querySelector tBody to get specifically the tBody section. Why tBody? Because the header is in thead, and we'll be inserting rows only into tBody. Keeping them separate makes things clean and prevents us from accidentally overwriting the header. We store this in employee list, which now points directly to the table body where new rows will be added and edited. Here we're getting the form itself. .querySelector form uses a CSS selector and returns the first form it finds in the page. Finally, we set up a variable called selectedRow. This will hold a reference to the table row we're currently editing. At the start, nothing is selected, so we set it to null. I'm using let here, not const, because the value will change over time. Here, I'm adding an event listener to the form. That means whenever the form is submitted, this function will run. Inside, I'm using event.preventDefault. This stops the default browser behavior of refreshing the page on form submit. Without this line, our whole app would reload every time we press submit, which we don't want. Finally, I call on form submit. This is our custom function where we'll handle all the logic for adding or updating employees later. So here, we've created our main function called onFormSubmit. This function is triggered whenever the user presses the submit button on the form. The first thing we do is check if any of the input fields are empty. Fullname.value.trim removes extra spaces and checks if the user typed something. The same check is done for employee code, country, and salary. If any field is empty, we show an alert saying please fill in all fields and immediately return, which means the function stops right there. If everything is filled in, then we move on to const form data equals read form data. This line collects all the form values and stores them in an object. We'll look at that function in detail later. Next comes a very important decision. If selected row is null, that means we're adding a new employee. So we call insert data, form data. Otherwise, if selected row already has a row stored, that means the user clicked edit, and we just need to update the existing data. Finally, after adding or updating, we call reset form to clear the inputs and prepare the form for the next entry. So, in short, this function is like the brain of the form. It validates the inputs, decides whether to insert or update, and then resets everything neatly. Now we create a function called readFormData. The purpose of this function is simple. It takes whatever values the user has typed into the form and packs them neatly into one object that we can use later. Inside the function, we are returning an object with 4 key value pairs. Full name. Here we're taking fullname.value.trim. That means we read the value typed in the full name field and remove any unnecessary spaces at the beginning or end. EMP code. Same thing for the employee code input field. Country. Again, we fetch the text from the country field. Salary. And finally, we grab the salary value entered by the user. By using trim, we make sure that even if the user accidentally adds spaces, those won't count as actual input. Now we're creating a function called insertData. Takes one parameter, data, which is the object we got earlier from readFormData. This object contains the full name, employee code, country, and salary. We use employeeList.insertRow to create a new row inside the employee table. This row will hold all the details of the new employee. We save this row inside a variable called newRow so we can work with it further. Here we create the first cell in our new row, which is at index 0. We then set its content to the employee's full name from data.fullname. So now the first column of the row shows the employee's name. The second cell is created, and we place the employee code inside it. Next is the salary cell. Notice here we're putting salary in the third column, and then we add the country in the fourth column. Quick note, normally, we might expect the order to be name code country salary, but in this code, salary is added before country. This means in the table, the salary will appear first, then country. If you want, we can easily fix this order later. Now we create the fifth cell. But this cell is special. Instead of text, it will hold 2 buttons, edit and delete. Here we're creating the edit button. Document.createElement, span, makes a new span element. Text content equals edit, puts the text edit inside it. We add a CSS class btn for styling. Then we attach an event listener. When someone clicks this button, the function onEdit, new row, will run. That function will load this row's data back into the form for editing. Now we do the exact same process for the delete button. The only difference is that when it's clicked, it calls onDelete, new row, which will remove the row from the table. Finally, we add both buttons to the fifth cell. That means in the last column of the table, you'll see 2 clickable options, edit and delete. We define a function named resetForm. Its job is simple. Clear the form fields after a submission or update so the user can start fresh. Here, we target the full name input box and set its value to an empty string. This completely clears whatever the user had typed before, like John Doe. We do the same for the employee code field. Now the employee code input is reset to blank. This clears the country input field. Without this step, the old value would remain, which might confuse the user. And this clears the salary input field. So now, after these 4 lines, all text inputs are empty again. This is very important. Remember when we used selected row in onEdit? It kept track of which row we were editing. By resetting it to null, we are basically saying, the user is not editing any row now. Treat the next submit as a new record insertion. If we don't reset this, the app might think the user is still editing something when they're not. Now we're declaring a function called onEdit. It receives one argument, td, which in our case represents the entire row of the table that the user clicked edit on. Here, we store that row inside our global variable selected row. This tells the app, hey, the user is editing this specific row. Remember it. SelectedRow.cells gives us all the table cells in this row as an array-like object. .cell0, the first column, full name. .textContent gives us the actual text inside that cell. We then assign that text to the form input for full name. Now the user sees the name filled back into the form, ready for editing. Same idea. .cell1 is the second column EMP code. Whatever text is there gets placed inside the employee code input box. Here we grab the third column, index 2, which holds the country. We assign it to the country input field so it shows up for editing. Finally, .cell3, the salary column. That value is sent into the salary input field. We define a function called updateData. Takes one parameter form data. This form data object comes from our readFormData function, so it already contains the user's latest input values. Here we're saying, go to the currently selected row, look at the first column, index 0, and replace its text with the new full name from the form. This updates the name cell of the row with the fresh value. Now, we move to the second column, index 1, employee code. We overwrite the old code with whatever the user typed in the form. Next is the third column, index 2, country. Again, we update its displayed value with the user's new input. Finally, we handle the fourth column, index 3, salary. The old salary value gets replaced with the new one from the form. Very important step. After updating, we set selected row back to null. Now we declare a function called onDelete. It accepts one parameter row. This row is the actual table row we want to delete, passed from where we clicked the delete button. Here, we use the confirm method, which pops up a native browser confirmation dialog. It shows the message, "Are you sure to delete this record?" The user can choose OK or cancel. If the user clicks OK, this line executes. Row is the table row we want gone. .remove is a DOM method that deletes the element completely from the page. After deleting, we call resetForm to clear any data in the input fields. And that's it. We've successfully built a complete employee management CRUD app from scratch using just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. We can now create, read, update, and delete employee records with ease. This project not only helped us practice DOM manipulation and event handling, but also gave us real-world experience of how CRUD operations work in web applications. If you enjoyed this project and learned something new, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss upcoming coding tutorials. Also, drop a comment below and let me know what feature should we add next to this app. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next project.